Keys to success. Do you want to know God's success formula? Why faith and obedience is his key to your success and how to apply it? If you understand how to use God's keys to success, how to use faith and obedience the way he's calling us to use it, then he shows us in the Bible in many ways, and I'm going to show you here. Right? How when you use faith, when you are obedient to his voice, he will bless you abundantly. And so I'm not just talking about, when I say abundantly, I'm not just talking about like in your heart where we're just, we have the fruit of the spirit. That's important, right? The fruit of the spirit, which is love, joy, like the fruit of the spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control, a relationship with him. He's going to bless us abundantly in those things, but he's also going to bless us abundantly in the things that he's given us as desires of our heart. The things that he's given us as desires in our heart. He tells us what? When we delight ourselves in him, he shall give us the desires of our heart. So those desires in our heart, what are those things that God's given you? Desires in our heart. I know things that he's given me, that he's shown me that I have as desires in my heart. I've had desires for a great marriage, right? I have a desire for a marriage that will last forever, a marriage that will honor him and be an example to my children, my children's children, and to others that we know, in a way that honors him and in a way that blesses other marriages, that those marriages will be loving, fruitful, and also marriages that will continue to honor him and what his desire for marriage is for us, right? It's and so that he's given me a desire to have children who are successful, who have relationships with him, who have a family that is grounded in his word, that have peace, right? That have finances, that have freedom, who know how to use their gifts in a way, having all those things and being grateful for all those things in a way that, again, honors him, right? So those are like my top desires. But then I have desires for the people, my team, the people who I work with, the people who help me in doing the things that God's called as my assignment. So my team. And when I say my team, I'm talking about the people who may be on my payroll. Hold on, let me just turn this down because it's a bother. All right. So people that may be on my payroll, people who I pay to do different jobs for me, right? And my team consists of my kids, but also consists of others throughout all over the world, different people throughout the world. The Angels and the Aprils and the PJs and the ladies and the Jays and there's so many other people, the Andrews and the Myrons and the Jeffs and there's so many other people who have done things over time. My accountants and my attorneys, those are people that are on my team. And these are people who I have a desire, my desire for them is the same thing that I desire for my kids and for me, right? And for my family, it's the same thing, that they have good, they have a relationship with the Lord, that their families and their homes are filled with the Holy Spirit, that their finances are blessed, that the work of their hands are blessed, so that they can be a blessing to one another, so that they can also represent him in a way, again, that pleases and honors him, right? As their as he's using them in their gifts. So what are your desires? What do you see as success? Do you desire those things? I'm sure you do. Do you desire those things for your family, for your kids? Do you desire those things for your friends? Do you desire those things for your extended family? Do you have a business where you're serving people? And do you have a team that helps you in the thing that you do? Do you go to work every day? And do you have people around you who support you at work, or people around you that you're supporting? Right? Do you pray for those people, and do you have a desire that those people's lives are blessed? Right? I'm sure you do. And so if that's what your desire is, those are desires that he does give you, that he puts in your heart. He wants those things. He wants those things for our families, and I'm going to prove that. He wants those things for the people that are around us, and I'm going to show you that. And he gives us a really simple formula on how to not be in a position where we may get those blessings. No, he gives us a formula that says, if you do these things, this is what you will get. It is impossible that these things won't happen, that you won't have those desires. So let me just walk you through this a little bit. And we're first going to turn to Deuteronomy, right? And Deuteronomy, it talks about, it goes into the blessings that he gives us, and he's talking to the Israelites. But remember, as he's talking to the Israelites, the Lord says, what? I am the same yesterday, today, and forever. Right? God is not a respecter of persons. What he does for them, what he does for his children from the beginning, he will continue to do for his children forever. Right? These are just his principles. If you follow our principles. What did he say to his first children? The first ones were who? Adam and Eve. Right? He said to them, be fruitful and multiply. Right? So, fill the earth, subdue it, have dominion over everything. He said, when he created them, he created us in his own image. Right? So as he was speaking to them, like, that didn't just go away when they died. That was for all of us. Right? When he wrote Genesis, he didn't write Genesis just so that the first people, or the first people that got the opportunity to be blessed with God's word in reading Genesis, it was just for them. No, it's for all of us. It wasn't for the people. It wasn't for those who he used to write Genesis. It wasn't just for them. Like the books of Moses, it wasn't just for Moses. It was so that we all would know who he is and what he wants us to do, and how and why he does what he does, and how, if he's doing it for us, how he's doing it for us. And so let me just in fact, let's turn to Deuteronomy in Deuteronomy, chapter 6. So in chapter 6, it says, the greatest commandment. And so the greatest commandment, it says, now this is the commandment, and these are the statutes. In fact, you know what? I'm gonna see how this works. We're gonna turn on the board and see in Deuteronomy. We're gonna make it bigger and just give you something to kind of look at with me, right? And let's see. Here we go. So in Deuteronomy 6, right, you could just kind of read along with me. It says, now this is a great commandment, and these are the statutes and judgments which the Lord your God has commanded to teach you, that you may observe them in the land which you are crossing over to possess. So when we talk about the land that we're crossing over to possess, what the way, what he was talking about there was he was about to take the Israelites from the desert and give them the land that was flowing with milk and honey that he promised their forefathers, Abraham, Isaac. He promised them that he had this great land for them. He promised, as he promised Abraham, that his seed, he will be the father of many nations, where his generations will be so vast, the only way he would be able to count them is if he was able to count the stars in the sky, the sea, the sand on the seashores. Like, that's how vast his blessing of the generations to follow that will come from Abraham. And that's where Abram became Abraham meaning the father of many nations, right? And so he had gotten them to the point where Moses had gotten them to the point where they were about to cross over. And now the Lord was showing through Moses, because he wasn't going to allow Moses to cross over with them, right? And that's something that I shared in the last video, last video. But, and that was because, and what I shared last week in that video, I shared where Moses, he allowed his emotion and his love and or his love and or hate get his emotions so involved for the people that he loved so much that he became disobedient. And in his disobedience, even for a small time, just in that one act of disobedience, it caused him to not be able to cross over with them, even though he was the one who God used to get them out of bondage. So now he's saying to Moses, okay, these are the things I want you to talk to my children, the Israelites, my people, and to make them keenly aware of when they get the blessings, what they're supposed to do with them and how they're supposed to respond. What's the obedience that I want them to have? And when they have the obedience, what will I do for them in that faith and obedience? So now that we've gotten that all clear, I'll start reading again. And so it says, and how does it relate? So it relates because, like, that is what he did with the promises that he gave them. Well, guess what? He also has promises for you and I. Not just when we pass on. He has promises for us, for those of us who know him, who love him. He has promises for us right here while we're here in the flesh. Right? If the same thing, the faith and the obedience, if we commit to those things and if we honor those things in a way that he's calling us to, these are the things that he's also going to do for us in the land, meaning the blessings that he has for us, right? And so so this is what he says. He says here, it says, now this is the commandment that, and these are the statutes and the judgments which the Lord your God has commanded to teach you, that you may observe them in the land which you are crossing over to possess, that you may fear the Lord, fear, reverence, to have reverence for him, to honor him, like in make sure he has his proper place in your life. Because when we get those blessings, sometimes we have a tendency to forget and shrink back, right? So don't forget who he is. Reverence, fear, the godly fear, not worldly fear that produces death. Godly fear, right? The godly fear. So that you fear the Lord your God and keep all his statutes and his commandments, which I command you, and your son and your grandson all the days of your life, and that that your days may be prolonged. Therefore, hear, O Israel, and be careful. Hear, my children, O Israel, hear, my children, you, me, and be careful to observe it, that it may be well with you, in that you may multiply greatly, as the Lord God of your fathers has promised you, a land flowing with milk and honey. Right? Again, going all the way back to the beginning, be fruitful and multiply. Right? So that you may multiply greatly, he says, as the Lord your God of your fathers has promised you, a land flowing with milk and honey. And so when he's talking about multiplying, it ain't just the seed where we're just growing in our generations, in our lineage, but it's also multiplying in the fruit of the greatness that in the abundance that he has for us, that he's going to use us for in our assignment to do the things that he's brought us here to do. So he's given us gifts, he's given us talents, he's given us vision and wisdom, right? And that's the seed, that's part of the seed that's within us. So he says, be fruitful and multiply. That's part of the seed, and the fruit that comes from that are the things that we're using to fill the earth and subdue it, right? To fill the earth. So again, the fruit of the Spirit, so all those things, but also your talents and your gifts and how you're serving people, how you're serving in your first ministry, your family first, and then you're serving the people who he's calling you to serve with your gifts outside of your family, so that what they will be blessed, and you'll represent him in their lives. And so whether it be in your business, you're representing him, or whether it be at work, you're representing him, or whether it be in, whatever that thing is, that gift that he's blessed you with, as you're sharing that gift with others, you're blessing them with your gifts. You're being fruitful, you're multiplying, and again, you're honoring him, right? And so it says, hear, O Israel, first, here's the greatest commandment: love the Lord your God. The Lord is one. The Lord your God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. And then he says, and here's key. This is so important. And these words which I command you shall be in your heart. So love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. Like, love the Lord. That should be in your heart. It's number one. And then he says, you shall You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and you shall and they shall be frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on doorposts of your house and on your gates. And so it's interesting because like you may wonder, like I have in my home, I have scripture throughout the house. I have pictures. I don't have pictures, like I don't have like Jesus pictures, because there is no, like, there's nothing in the Bible that, I mean, they give images, but there's no, I mean, there's no pictures of God in the Bible, right? He gives us an image, he gives us features, but there's no picture. He's never given us a picture. So there's no pictures in my home of Jesus, but there are scriptures in our home. And it's one of the reasons why I have scriptures always around me, because he says what? Like, as he's telling us these things, he's basically saying that he says, I want to be always at the top of your mind. Like, these are the things. How can we love the Lord with all of our heart, with all of our soul, with all of our mind, with all of our strength? How do we do that? Well, in our flesh, like all these other things coming at us, we got TV and iPhones and Apple Watches and all these kinds of technologies, computers. We got cars, we got family, we got friends, we got, activities outside of the home, we got work, we got all these things that are vying for our attention. And as these things are vying for our attention, it makes it harder and harder for us to give him to 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 remember, right? To how do we give him like all of our heart and all of our soul and all of our mind? How do we give him all of that? Well, he wants us to do these simple things that keep him at the front of everything. And so, because our homes, he's saying these are our homes. What's so important in our homes? As he's saying, first of all, teach them diligently to our children. So if we're teaching these words, his statutes to our children, we're not going to tell them lies, right? We're gonna pass on. He wants us to pass on to them who he is and what he did for us and how he brought us over and got us out of bondage, or got us out of the land that wasn't abundant, that wasn't flowing with milk and honey. How he brought us out. So teach that to them, so that they don't make the same mistakes, or they don't turn and go back to that. Right? Teach them. He says, talk to them when you sit in your house and walk by the way, when you lie down and when you rise up. Right? And then when he's talking about binding them on our hands, he's just saying, like, keep them. Like, back in those days, that's what the Jews do, and they still do. Like, they have these little frontlets, and they have their garments and things, and that's, but the key is what he said, and with the new covenant is what? Write them upon our heart. Like, write his covenant, his words upon our heart. And so that's one. Now he says what? I'm going to go into here into Deuteronomy 7. And in Deuteronomy 7 it says, when the Lord your God brings you, I'm sorry, I'm going back to 6 because this is also important. It's all important, but this is key. We talk about when we talk about being obedient to his voice, we also have to be mindful that there's also something that comes with disobedience. And he talks about it. He's not just telling us about obedience, he's telling us, if you really want these blessings, be cautious of this. Don't turn back. Like, don't turn back. Being obedient is what got you here. Being faithful is what got you here. Don't turn back. And because when you turn back, this is what happens. And this is what disobedience kind of looks like. This is what he's cautioning us from. So in 10, it says, and so shall it be when the Lord your God brings you into that land of which he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. So what did he swear to you? What did he swear to your mom and your father, your grandmother, your granddad? What did he swear to them? What did he promise them that he was going to do when they prayed for you? When they prayed for you and your kids, what did he promise them? And because of their faithfulness, because of his faithfulness and his honoring, because he says it's impossible for him to lie, him honoring their faithfulness, although they may not have gotten there with you, as Moses didn't actually get there with the Israelites, Abraham didn't get there to see the promised land, to live in the promised land, but he promised him. And he was faithful in his promise. And so, but it requires also something of us, that he says he's going to give it to us, but he also says that we may live long in it. We may live long in that land. So what does he say? He says, so he swore to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give you large and beautiful cities, which you did not build, houses full of good things, which you did not fill, hewn out wells, which you did not dig, vineyards of olive trees, which you did not plant. When you have eaten and are full, then beware. So when you've gotten all these things and you've eaten, you're full, you're just, beware of this, lest you forget the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt, brought you out of financial bondage, spiritual bondage, sexual bondage, physical bondage, emotional bondage, like all kinds of different things that kept you from being great, being able to have the abundance in the gifts, in the fruit that he's in, the assignment that he's given you. So in those gifts and in the fruit, so that you can go forward in your assignment abundantly, to touch those he's calling you to touch and be a blessing to in an abundant way, in a great way. And that you can also have those gifts and those blessings in abundance, right? Not scarcity. And so he says, but once you've gotten these things, like, don't forget that I was the one that brought you out of all of that stuff. Don't turn back. He says, from the house of bondage, you shall fear the Lord, reverence your God, and serve him, and shall take oaths in his name. You shall not go after other gods, the gods of the people who are around you, for the Lord your God is a jealous God among you. You're his bride. He doesn't want his bride with someone else. We're his bride. And he wants all of our heart first. He wants to be first. Above all things, we're his bride. And so he says he's a jealous God. And he said, lest the anger of the Lord your God will be aroused against you and destroy you from the face of the earth. And you shall not tempt the Lord your God as you tempted him in Massa. And basically, and you shall diligently keep the commandments of the Lord your God, his testimonies and his statutes, which he has commanded you. And so when he's talking about how we tempted him, basically, again, I shared this in also one of my previous Bible studies, where what the Israelites did then was they just, like, after he brought them out of Egypt, so he, all those plagues and all that stuff he did with Pharaoh, so that Pharaoh would let them go. And then when he brought them through the desert and he parted the Red Sea, when Pharaoh changed his mind and then started chasing, after letting them go, then started chasing them because he was going to kill them. He had his soldiers go out, and the only thing between his soldiers, like, they were stuck in the desert. It was just the soldiers on one side coming after them to kill him in the Red Sea. And there was nowhere for them to go. And the Lord parted the Red Sea and allowed them to walk through the Red Sea on dry land to get to the other side. And then as the soldiers followed them through, the Lord made sure they all were they were all crossed. All the Israelites, his children, had crossed that barrier. There's this big barrier stopping you, this big barrier that seems like it's like there's no possible way that I'm going to get out of this bondage. There's no way. Like, in my strength, in your strength, there's no way that you're going to be able to overcome this mountain, this barrier. And again, a mustard seed of faith, what did he do? He opened it and he showed himself. He showed his love and his faithfulness and his power and what he could do. And then even after, and then when he got them all through, the soldiers that were still in there, he just closed up the Red Sea and killed them all. Right. And so he showed himself. And then, like, the first little challenge that they had in the desert at Meribah, at Massa, they complained. They complained about the Lord. They complained to Moses about, why did you bring us out here to die? There's no water. Why can't you? Should have just left us in bondage. And the Lord was angry at that point. He was angry because he had shown something so great and he really wanted fellowship with them, but yet their hearts were still just, they didn't believe. They didn't have the faith. And so he said, don't tempt him. Like, what are the things that God's brought you out of? Think about the things that God has brought you out of that were seemingly like they were daunting, and that they were just seemingly, it was over. It was over. There was no way. Like, when you looked at that situation, there was no way with the resources that you had, or that you thought you had, with, how great that mountain may have looked, and the thing that was coming at you could have been a situation with health. Was it a situation with finances? Was it a situation with your children or your husband? Was it a situation with your wife, with marriage? Was it a situation with a job? Like, I'm like, where, like, you lost a job, or you just had no money to accomplish something that you really needed to have? Like, what kind of situation where it was perilous. And then what seemingly was something that was impossible, God did the impossible. Right? God did the impossible. And you knew it had to be him. What was that? We all have had those situations. I've had them. And in that situation, after he's gotten us through it, because he says also in here, he says he did that with them. He brought them through the desert. He allowed them to go thirsty. He allowed them to go hungry. He allowed them to be in bondage. Why? Because he wanted to prepare them for really what he had for them. And the greatness and the abundance that he had for them, he needed to know what was in their heart. He needed to form their heart through those trials so that they would honor him in the promised land. And so hopefully that makes sense to you, right? So now and hopefully you can see, like, you can relate that to something that you're going through. Are you like, don't turn back. Like, let's not turn back. Let's remember him and keep him top of mind, top of heart, right? And then, as I said, I'm going to give you, like, this is also what he says about obedience. And so in obedience, he says, in 7, he says, I'm going to go. I'll just start again. Like, I'm not going to skip. So it says, when the Lord your God brings you into the land which you go to possess, and has cast out many nations, he says, many nations before you, the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than you. And when the Lord your God delivers them over to you, you shall conquer them and utterly destroy them. So he's saying there's going to be challenges, like, in order to get there. So in order to get to this land that he's prepared for you, he's prepared for you. But how did he prepare it? He says, in the scripture, he says, a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children, right? But then he also says in that same scripture, he says that the wealth, the riches of the wicked, the sinner, are laid up for the righteous. So how is he preparing all those things? As he says it here. He says, in this land which I swore to give you, where you have beautiful cities, which you did not build, houses full of good things, which you did not fill, hewn out wells, which you did not dig, vineyards and olive trees, which you did not plant, right? All these things he's saying. And then he says here, in the land which you go to possess, he says, all these mightier nations that were in that land, I'm going to take them out for you. I'm going to hand them over to you. So when you go, just wipe them out. He says, but what happened? They are the ones that I used to create all this stuff for you. While y'all were in bondage, you didn't see me doing all this stuff through them. While you were in bondage, while you were doing that thing, you thought I wasn't with you. I had these people building this land, nurturing this land, so that when you got there, your work wouldn't be so hard. You'd be able to enjoy it and then use it for my good pleasure, to honor me. Right? So he says, you shall make no covenant with them. So destroy, like, all these things. When you get over there, you might have seen, you may have in that land, in those blessings, in the things that he's given you, you might, you may see people, he may use people to help you cross over, right? He may show you some business skills from someone who doesn't really know him, but from a business skills perspective was able to bless you in showing you how to utilize that skill, how to utilize that gift, right? How to give you some clarity so that when God shows you some other things, like God uses them so that you can use that to really serve the way he wants you to serve. But then you recognize that their life may not represent what the life that God's calling you to lead as you're honoring him. And if that's the case, like you got to slay that. Like don't hold on to that part. Like don't go back. Like don't hold on to those things. Like they built that, God used them to do that, and then it's over. Like you got it, you move on. Like now it's yours. And then you use it for the right thing. So he says, you shall make no covenant with them, nor show them mercy, nor you should not make marriages with them. You shall not give your daughter or your son to their son, nor take their daughter for you. So he's basically just saying, like, don't, because I used them, because they did all these things and I prepared through them, if you know that they're not representing the life that I have for you, then like don't hold on even a little bit to that, to what they do. Why? It says, because he says, for they will turn your sons away from following me to serve other gods. So the anger of the Lord will be aroused against you and destroy you suddenly. But thus you shall deal with them. You shall destroy their altars and break down their sacred pillars and cut down their wooden images and burn down their carved images. So don't receive those things. Like make sure your kids, you may understand it, but when so again, the stuff we watch on TV, like those things are influencing our children. The music that we're listening to, those things are influencing our children, right? The words that are coming out of our mouth, those things are influencing what we're saying to our children. In fact, I used a word the other day and my son had to say, Dad, like you got to stop using that word. I said, well, it's a biblical word. Like I used the word stupid. And he said, Dad, you got to stop using that word. I'm like, well, I'm not, like, it's not a bad word. He goes, yeah, but the babies are mad at you. I'm like, why? He goes, because we teach them, don't be calling people stupid. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. You shouldn't be calling each other stupid. And he goes, I know it's a biblical word because in Psalms, I mean, in Proverbs, it talks about, stupid. What does it say? Stupid are those who can't receive correction. And so he goes, but Dad, sometimes you're not using it that way. And they're receiving it the wrong way. So be careful the words, like when we start twisting God's words or we start using things or saying things, they're very influential. And the kids hear me say it just on a video or something like, why is Granddad using those bad words? Right? And so we have to be mindful. We have to like put down those things. And in this case, like it's not a bad word. We just have to teach them how to use it properly. But there's stuff on TV and there's stuff that we're listening to in music that are bad. And it may not be like a vulgar word, but it means the same thing. And to us, like society is what is desensitizing so much of the things that that God tells us honors and glorifies him, that he has for us so that we can live long in the land that he's given us. In society, the music, the things that people talk about and laugh about and joke about and honor and glorify and just cause us to emulate and idolize those like, those things that are the opposite of what God has for us, to where we don't even really recognize it anymore. It's just like our hearts are just so calloused, so calloused. And so this is what he says. Therefore, in 9, therefore know that the Lord your God, he is God, the faithful God who keeps the covenant. Here it is, of mercy for 1,000 generations with those who love him and keep his commandments. So the covenant of mercy for 1,000 generations, the covenant of mercy and love for 1,000 generations. Like, we don't deserve what we have. I do not deserve to be sitting here talking to you right now. I've made so many bonehead mistakes. And I'm going to use the word stupid in this case. I've made some very stupid mistakes in the past before knowing him, where I couldn't receive correction. I wasn't trying to be wise. I was just trying to be smart, arrogant, successful in the world, selfish, right? All those things about me. Made some really, really, really bad mistakes in the past. But because of his covenant of mercy for 1,000 generations, my grandmother loved the Lord. And I know, like, she loved the Lord. And she made sure I knew that Jesus loved me. Because every time I talked to her, it's our first words out of her mouth and the last words out of her mouth. Jane, Jesus loves you. You know he loves you, right? When you're on God's side, you're on the winning side, as she used to always say. And I love you too. And I knew she prayed for us. And God cannot lie. And he keeps a covenant of mercy and love for 1,000 generations of those who love him and keep his commandments. So he honored her prayer for us. Just like he's honoring my prayer for my kids and my grandkids. He honored that. And so, but because of that covenant of mercy, I'm here and I'm able in his assignment to be able to share his word. You're able in your assignment to be able to do the things that you're able to do when you don't deserve it. He should have and could have just wiped you out. And so he does that, and he says, so just know that he is God. Keep him here, not here, not below your wife and your kids or your money or your business or your cars and your success or your vacations and your trip, your job, your dog, your cat. Like, don't keep him here, always here, above, on the top of your heart, on the top of your mind, like here above everything. And he says, then sorry, there's also the opposite side of that when we don't, right? So don't want you to forget that part, because that's important. There's the good, and then there's the consequences for not. And he says what? He repays those who hate him to their face to destroy them. He says he will not be slack. He will repay them. He will repay him to their face. Therefore, you shall keep the commandments, the statutes, and the judgments which I command you today to observe them. He says, now, here's a blessing, right? So now when we start talking about the blessings, this is it. Like, this is it. He says, then it shall come to pass, because you listen to these judgments and keep and do them, that the Lord your God will keep with you the covenant and the mercy which he swore to your fathers. And he will love you and bless you and multiply you. He will also bless the fruit of your womb and the fruit of your land. So the fruit of your womb, fruit of your land, your grain and your new wine and your oil, the increase of your cattle and the offspring of your flock in the land of which he swore to your fathers to give you. You shall be blessed above all the peoples. There shall not be a male or female barren among you or among your livestock. And the Lord will take away from you all sickness and will afflict you with none of the terrible diseases of Egypt, which you have known. But so all the terrible diseases of Egypt. So not only the diseases and the things that the the plagues and things that he brought on Pharaoh and the Egyptians, but also the things that the Israelites had to endure while they were there in bondage. Right? Those diseases were not just physical, but they were spiritual and they were physical. I mean, they were spiritual and mental as well. Right? So he's saying that he's going to afflict them with no more of that stuff. Like that was what kept you in bondage. Those were the things that when you're in bondage, you live with and you endure and you suffer through. You won't have to do that here. Not when you're obedient, not when you're in the land and in the blessings that he's given you and you're walking in that fruit. And so he says, but he will lay them all on those who hate you. So as he's placing that hedge of protection around you and your family, as he's placing that hedge of protection around us and the things that he's blessed us with, the things that he's given us desire, the things in our assignment, our ministries, as he's placed that hedge of protection, this is one of the weapons he's using. He's basically just saying all those that hate you and want to come against what it is I'm calling for you to do, come against the things that I've blessed you with, they're going to have to deal with all those afflictions, right? That's what they're going to have to deal with, not you. And he says, also you shall destroy all the peoples whom the Lord your God delivers over to you. Your eyes shall have no pity on them, nor shall you serve their gods, for that will be a snare to you. If you should say in your heart, these nations are greater than I, how can I dispossess them? You shall not be afraid of them, but you shall remember well what the Lord your God did to Pharaoh and to all Egypt, the great trials which your eyes saw, the signs and the wonders, the mighty hand and the outstretched arm by which the Lord your God brought you out. So shall the Lord your God do to all the peoples of whom you are afraid. More. So I'm gonna just pause here just for another second, where he's saying again that you saw what I did for you then. Don't forget it. And I told you from the beginning to fill the earth, subdue it, and have dominion over all these things. He's saying where your place is. I created you in my image. Your place is here too, right? Your place is below me, but above all other things, as my people, as my children, right? You and it's not so that you can you still serve, but those things are there for you to serve, for you to enjoy, for you to bless others who don't know that those things even exist. But guess what? Your kids, like you may have seen the things that I did for you. That's why I want you to make sure you talk about them, keep them at the top of your heads, your minds, your hearts, your souls. Talk about them in your homes with your kids, because they may not have seen it, or they may have seen it and they were too young to remember, but you got to let them know so that they know who I am. And the greatness the great things that I'm doing through you is not because you're great. It's because in your own flesh and in your own power, you're great because of my power that's in you. And they have the same power. They have the same power. Just don't be afraid of those things that I put there under you. Right? The world wants you to believe that they're greater than you. No, recognize them for where they're supposed to be. And then when you trust what I've done, then you'll be able to subdue, you'll be able to have dominion. So again, due to all the peoples whom you're afraid, moreover, the Lord your God will send the hornet among them until those who are left who hide themselves from you are destroyed. So listen, he's just showing you all these things that he's doing. Like, it doesn't even make sense. And that's where faith comes in, because the things that he's saying he's going to do, it just based on our own logic. God, how does that even make sense that you can do all of this stuff? Like that you're going to do all of that for me? Well, what does he say? He says, let's go here for a second. Let's go to Hebrews, right? And in Hebrews, what does it say in Hebrews? In Hebrews, he talks about faith. In fact, he calls it, he doesn't call it, I call it the wall of faith. And in the wall of faith, he's talking about, well, first of all, what does he say faith is? He says, in Hebrews 11, he says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. For by it, the elders obtained a good testimony. And by faith, we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that the things which are seen were not made of things which are visible. So when God formed the world, going back to the beginning in Genesis, what does he say? He says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void. The darkness was on the face of the earth, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. So in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So he had a vision for the heavens and the earth. He created it. Boom. He didn't even say anything yet. He just created the heavens and the earth. Where does our creation come from in the beginning? In the beginning, everything comes from what? An idea, a thought, right? You may not have put hand to anything yet. Where did this come from? An idea, a thought. You're watching me through some technological advancement that God gave man a gift for from an idea or thought. But we still had to use something that God created in order to make it happen, right? He started with nothing, right? There was zero, and he created everything first from an idea, then he spoke it into existence. Then he started getting busy with his words, right? With his word. But he says, but they weren't visible. These things were not visible. You could see them here, but they weren't visible in the flesh. They weren't visible in the flesh. And so those things that he's saying to the Israelites, I'm going to do this. I'm going to bring plagues. I'm going to send hornets. I'm going to, like, all these things that are trying to keep you from the greatness that I have for you. He's saying, I'm going to take care of all that stuff. Like, you got those 7 nations that are in that land that I'm having, the promised land, the land that's filled with milk and honey that I promised your forefathers to give you. You got all these huge blessings that I planted the seed of desire and the seed of vision for you, but yet, like, it may be hard for you based on where you sit right now. Like what's your life look like? What does your family look like today? What does your finances look like today? What does your home look like today? What does your work look like today? What does your health look like today? Are those things that you know could be improved significantly? And are any of those things, there may be somebody I'm talking to where like it may seem like there is no improvement, but yet, or it may seem like you are at the bottom of the barrel. Like, like, like it, you might as well just, you feel like giving up in some instances, right? You may feel like giving up because it just seems like, why? Why, Lord? Why am I just doing all this? Like, there's no way, but he's giving you a desire and a vision that seems like it just seems so illogical. He may give you a desire that you will be. Thanksgiving's coming. You're going to be sitting around with your family on Thanksgiving, just blessed with all your family around you, eating and fellowshipping, your friends, your family, right? And no, with peace and joy and no cares or worries. Everyone's healthy. You may have that, and he may have given you desire for a business that reaches the world, that is making millions and millions of dollars. He may have given you a desire for a business that's making billions of dollars, that changes the world. He may give you vision for a gift that you have, that your children have. That it just seems like, man, you have a gift, but you seem like you're the only one who recognizes what that gift is. And he's giving you a desire that, man, you're gonna do some amazing things with that gift. How? Like, I'm the only one that even recognizes it. You may see your kids just in a situation. They may be in trouble. You may have someone in prison. You may have someone that's right now got a case, right? That's where their fate seems like it's in the hands of the judge and the jury. You may have a family member right now who's just seemingly on their deathbed. Someone who's so special, that means so much to you, that's on their deathbed. And it just seems like there's like their fate is in the hands of doctors and the nurses and the medical staff. And it just seems impossible. But yet he's giving you desire. He's giving you not a desire, just a desire and a vision for seeing that person, your loved one, walk free from whatever that thing is, whether it be that situation where they may have been wrongly accused of something. It may have been where the person that's on the deathbed is now up and smiling and spending time with the family. Like, he may give you and in your brain you're going, how is that even possible? But yet it's so clear for you. You could see it. But you keep suppressing those feelings, those visions, that desire, because you believe it's just not possible. Well, he's telling you that it is. He's telling you that it is. And so, but we must have faith. We must, because he says again, it's the substance of things hoped for. So the things that you hope for, you may not be able to touch it and feel it and see it yet, but you can sense there's a substance you're getting. He's giving you like glimpses of like, this is possible. He's giving you the things you're hoping for. He's giving you glimpses of those things. and the evidence of things not yet seen. So he's also giving you evidence that like it's this could really happen. Don't suppress it. Your business, your finances could be 10 times, 100 times more than what they are. He's putting people in your life that's showing you some things that seem impossible, but he's using them. He's using them. He's shown it. He's shown that he's done it with them, and he's shown that he's helped them do it with others. And now it's your turn. But yet you're like, oh, not me. Is it really, really possible? Because what? You may have to give up something. You may have to have faith. There's some faith that you have to have in order to do the thing. For them to help you. But it's so clear. You got the substance and you got the evidence. Like it may be where you got a glimpse. Again, your son, your daughter, your family member that's walking out of that jail, getting off of that hospital bed. He's showing you evidence where a doctor or an attorney or a friend or someone showed you that there were others that recovered from this thing, that went through the same thing and how the Lord brought them out. How the Lord used this thing or that thing to bring them out. It's possible. So don't suppress it because you're afraid to be disappointed, because it doesn't make sense. Don't suppress it. He says here, by faith, Abel offered to God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, through which he obtained witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and through it, being dead still speaks. He says, by faith, Enoch was taken away so that he did not see death, and it was not found because God had taken him. For before he was taken, he had this testimony that he pleased God. But without faith, it is impossible to please him. It's impossible to please God. For he who comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. By faith, Noah, being divinely warned of the things not yet seen, moved with godly fear, prepared an ark for the saving of his household, by which he condemned the world and became the heir of the righteousness which is according to faith. And by faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he would receive as an inheritance. That land that was filled with milk and honey, Canaan, today is Israel. Israel, thousands of years later, the Israelites are there, and that is their land. It's Israel. And he goes, and by faith, he dwelt in the land of promise, as in a foreign country, dwelling there in tents with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he waited for the city which has foundations, whose builders and maker is God. By faith, Sarah herself also received strength to conceive seed, and she bore a child when she was past the age. Was Sarah 99 when she had 98 when she had Isaac. And so she was well past the age because she judged him faithful who had promised her. Therefore, from one man and him as good as dead were born as many as the stars of the sky in multitude, innumerable as in the sand which is by the seashore. So Abraham 99, Sarah 98, and well into their 90s, well past the age of being able to bear children, God promised them. And by faith, she believed. And not only did he give her Isaac, but he gave her a seed through her that the generations were like the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore, as many as that. And these all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, were assured of them, embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For those who say such things declare plainly they seek a homeland. And truly, if they had called to mind that country from which they had come out, they would have had opportunity to return. But now they desire a better, that is a heavenly country. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. So we know that there is another place. We know that there's a heavenly realm, but we also know that he's prepared a place here for us on earth, that land that's filled with milk and honey, the promised land that he has for us here, like in his hand, in the palm of his hand, where we abundantly have the fruit, where we abundantly are able to do in the gifts and share and serve in the gifts that he's given us, the purpose in our assignment. And we know that that's a heavenly place. We know what we have every day when we wake up is a heavenly place. But we know it's in the midst. He's using us because it's in a midst of so many others who don't see, who don't know. And he's using us. He set us aside for a purpose. And while we're serving in that purpose and honoring him in that service, he's allowing us to live long as we're obedient and faithful. He's blessing us with success in the things that he has for us. And he's given us all the milk and the honey and all the other abundant things that he desires for us to have. And so it's the last thing I want to read, and then we're going to wrap up. And so I'm still here, but now it says the faith of Moses. And it says, by faith, Moses. And the reason why I want to read this is because your families, like, think about your families for a minute. Think about the 1,000 generations that he's talking about, that he wants to bless with a covenant of love and mercy. The 1,000 generations that he's calling you to touch. The 1,000 generations who are counting on you. The 1,000 generations who don't even know you yet. The 1,000 generations that are not just a part of your lineage, but because of Abraham's faithfulness, I'm here today able to know God's greatness. Because of Abraham's faithfulness, I'm here to know that, to say that I am a child of God, because the seed, through Abraham's seed, the Lord came and gave his son to die for my sins, that I may be grafted into his branch, and that I may receive all the things, all the blessings that he's promised his children, even though I may not be an Israelite. And so I'm part of the 1,000 generations that are not even part of the blood, the original blood, that or Abraham's blood, Abraham's seed, right? And in God, there are others who in the 1,000 generations who it doesn't just go down in your lineage, but there's people that we're going to touch, that you're going to touch, that he's calling for you to touch, because you touch someone that knows someone that knows someone that knows someone. And because in your assignment you were faithful, their life, their family's life is also changed forever, right? And so by faith, Moses, when he was born, was hidden 3 months by his parents, because they saw he was beautiful. He was a beautiful child, and they were not afraid of the king's command to kill all the babies, the male babies. Kill them all, he said. They weren't afraid. By faith, Moses, when he became of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than enjoy the passing pleasures of sin. So rather than just forget that those are my people, they don't got what I got. Like I got some privilege here because Pharaoh's daughter took me in, and she wants to raise me as her son, and I get to be treated like a prince when while y'all are being treated like slaves. By and by faith, he said, no, I don't. I know who I am, and I would rather God. I'd rather be who I am than be someone else, even if that's calling me to sin, that gives me the worldly pleasures that God doesn't really have for me. And so by faith, Moses, esteeming the reproach of Christ's greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he looked to the reward. So he was faithful, looking to the rewards that God had for him versus what Pharaoh, the king, could do for him. And by faith, he forsook Egypt. So he left Egypt, not fearing the wrath, or he went back to Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. By faith, he kept the Passover in the sprinkling of blood, lest he would be destroyed, lest he who destroyed the firstborn should touch them. And by faith, they passed through the Red Sea as by dry land, whereas the Egyptians attempting to do so were drowned. So by faith, God's success formula, he has a success formula for us. Being obedient to his voice and being faithful to what he's telling us. When it seems like all may be lost. Being obedient to his voice, knowing who he says you are, remembering and revering who we know he is and who he's shown himself to be. And then being faithful in our walk, being faithful even when all may seem to be lost. When we combine obedience to his voice with the faith of a mustard seed, all those things, the seed of desire, the seed that he's given you for the things that he's, your family, your finance, your health, your ministry, your home, the seed of desire that he gave you. While you might be in that place, remember, while you might be in that place where it's he's forming you. He's allowing you to go through the time of the challenge of being a little thirsty, being a little hungry, being a little scared and hot, right? He may have you in that place while he's doing that. Remember what he said. He's already got some things going on over here, preparing that place for you. It's already prepared. He promised. And with faith, you're not going to give up. With obedience, you're going to keep walking, and you're going to slay those things that want to seem like they're about to take you out. You're going to trust him and let the Lord do what he's going to do. And then as he gets you over those mountain-like hurdles, because you just kept moving forward or just sitting still and knowing that he's God, because he called you to just sit still. Not because he called you to move. He called you to move and you move. He called you to sit still and you sat still. He called you to invest and you invested. He calls you to turn and you turned. He called you to get out and you got out. He called you to get off that treadmill and you got out the treadmill. He called you to talk to your children. You talked to your children. He called you to guide your children and you guided them. He called you to show them, even though you may not get there, you showed them. He's calling you. You can't even sleep thinking about it because he's calling you. He's calling you. He's calling you. And you move because you had a mustard seed of faith. That's all you need. Just believed. And then when he got you over to the promised land, when he got you over to that thing that he promised you, it's all there. It's all there in a way that you can now just enjoy it and honor him and yell from the top of the mountain that my God is faithful, that our God is real, and he cannot lie, and he's the reason that we have what we have, that you have what you have. He's the reason. So that's the keys to God's success. And that is the recipe. That's the reason. If you just follow his success formula with obedience to his voice and faithfulness, he will honor you he will honor and bless you for 1,000 generations with a covenant of love and mercy. And your heart will be moved. Your family will be moved. The generations that he's calling, that he's touching because of you will be moved. And in the end, when it's all said and done, he will be able to say to you, well done, my good and faithful servant. So hopefully this was a blessing to you. And if it was, just share it with some people, share it with 10 people, share it with 7. 7 is the number of of completion, share it with 7 people. And because someone just may need to hear this message. You just never know. And and if you comment also in the comments, I'll send you something that will prayerfully also be even more of a blessing to you. So with that said, God bless you. You got this. And remember, love him. All your soul, all your heart, all your mind, all your strength. And he'll never, he'll never lie. He'll never disappoint you. So God bless you.